Okay, good morning, ladies. I just want to thank you for joining me to have this uh, relevant and timely discussion on the whole Black Lives Matter movement. Margot, you are in the US, Misha, you are in Canada. So I just wanted to get a gist of different thoughts that everyone is currently sharing. So without further ado, let me talk. Do you guys mind introducing yourselves, please?
Sure. Hi, my name is Margot Todman Mack. I'm actually Jason's cousin, his first cousin. I live in New Jersey currently, but I have always lived in New York. I still consider myself a New Yorker. I was born in Manhattan, but raised in Queens. And I've been living in New Jersey, married and raising two young girls, age 11 and 9, and I've been in Jersey for 10 years.
And I'm Misha Walker. I used to live in Barbados for about 20 years. I'm originally from Jamaica. So I moved to Barbados at the age of 3, left Barbados probably about the age of 24. I've been living in Toronto for the last 2 years.
Thank you very much. Margot, I want to start with you. Can you give me a general sense of as a Black person, the feeling that you currently have being in the United States with all that's going on at the present moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good question to start with. I would say that it's mixed emotions. I didn't say in my introduction, but I'm a high school vice principal, and in a high school that's very, very diverse, racially, ethnically, and religiously, also in northern New Jersey. So I definitely feel the burden for my two daughters, like I told you, age 9 and 11, and my students. But I would say I have mixed emotions because as a Black person and a Black woman in America, this has always been an issue, right? So I'm 38 years old, soon to be 39 in August, and this has been my reality from me being a little girl. So just because it's being plastered on social media and the news, it doesn't mean it's new to me. So this has been a feeling that I've been living with as far as I can remember.
Okay. Well, as you just said, this is something that's been going on for years.
Mm-hmm.
For years. And this is definitely not the first time you saw, a Black man, being brutally murdered in the streets by a white police officer. So what do you think sparked this movement? Just can you give me your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And I think me working with young people for so long gives me a good lens to understand it. I mean, I think as the past decade has gone by us, young people are empowered. Is it because of social media? Is it because of their parents just doing a different job in raising them to speak up and use their voices? I think it's definitely a blend of the two. But I can tell you, I work with young people that are empowered. They think something's wrong with the lunch in the school, they're going to write a petition. They think something's wrong with our dress code, they're going to tell you about it. They'll be respectful, but they're definitely going to tell you their opinion. So I am not surprised by the uprising of young people of all colors. I'm not surprised of the protests that are still going on. It's not just a one-day protest now, that maybe I saw that when I was growing up. I'm not surprised that it's being sustained because we are in the generation of people that speak up. And, as an educator, we preach to them social justice. We preach to them use your voices. They're doing it. So we can't get mad at this point. I don't think anyone of any color can get mad at this point because this is what we have raised them to do.
Okay. So do you believe that before that's going on now, do you believe that anything is going to, we still have a long way to go, to eradicate the whole racism issue, but do you believe that at least before that's going on, do you believe the police brutality part of it, do you believe that some light will be shed on this and things will hopefully change going forward?
I'll be really honest. I consider myself a realist, but I also consider myself to be hopeful. So the realist part of me says it might take a long, long time. Like way before, like way after, when I'm an old lady sitting in a rocking chair, hopefully retired in Barbados. But, you know, just as an example, you know, I woke up today and told my girls, okay, girls, there's another incident. There was another incident in Atlanta.
Yeah. So.
A young man, you know, was sleeping in his car, not bothering anybody, and he's dead. So, again, because again, I can tell you, I have been spoken to in an aggressive manner by police officers that are not white, right? That are Black and that are Latino and that are Asian. So it's not, I think it's yes, 100%. The foundation is race, but I also think it's the whole, what we call in America, the blue code of silence, or the blue code, the police code. So, I mean, I'm hopeful, but I think it will take a very, very long time. Race is in the fabric of everything that is America. You know, the enslaved Africans built this country, and not just this country, most of our Eurocentric countries. So, you know, and it's hard for people to let go and see not just African Americans, but Latinos, Asians, you know, quote unquote, coming up. It's hard for them to see that. And it's hard to see people of color in power. So I'm hopeful, but the realist, it's going to take a very long time.
Okay. Long time. Misha, I want to jump over to you. With these protests that we're seeing now, we're also seeing looting coming into the equation this time around. What are your thoughts on the looting? I hear some people have mixed emotions on it. So what are your thoughts on the looting?
Well, my feelings are mixed too, but I think you have to also distinguish that the protesters are protesting and the looters are looting. And yes, it's the case that some of the protesters are being involved in some of the looting activities, but realistically, the majority of protesters are peacefully protesting. And I think that we're getting lost in the message of the whole protest is being lost by the media trying to put out this propaganda that, oh, it's not as peaceful as we think. The actual protesters are destroying buildings, destroying businesses, stealing. But when you actually look at some of the news that's coming forward, it's white supremacists that are trying to kind of create a smoke screen to divert our attention from the actual cause to, oh, well, these people are stealing, let's the government shut down this operation, let's put down the march. But realistically, I don't know, I think that you have to identify, okay, some protesters are looting, but the majority of them aren't. So let's kind of isolate looters and protesters and focus on the march and focus on the movement and not get lost with the distractions that the media and the government is trying to put out. At the end of the day, okay, looting is happening, but what caused the looting? What caused people to be so frustrated and feel the need to speak out or to, I guess, involve themselves in activities where this might even have to happen? Yeah. If it wasn't for the protest or wasn't for the police brutality, there would be no gathering of people to even be a looting situation, even though it's not the protesters really and truthfully. But like I said, it's just white supremacists and sometimes even police that's trying to put out the narrative, put out the narrative that, okay, this is violent, let's shut it down, and we lose sight of what the cause is really for.
Yeah, I totally understand where it's coming from. Both of you guys, you said, Margo, you live in Jersey. Misha, you are in Canada at the moment. Have you guys ever experienced any form of racism? And if so, how did you deal with it? Misha, we could start with you here.
Okay, so there was a time when I was still living in Barbados and I traveled to Canada for vacation. And then we went somewhere up north, probably about 2 or so hours from Toronto. And the family friend that I was staying by, he made it a note to me that, okay, we're the only Black people that live in this area. And at the time, I was like, oh, like, it was the purpose of telling me that. I was like, okay, noted, like, I didn't see the necessity for telling me that. So we went to the Walmart. And from the time we entered the Walmart, all eyes were on us. 4 Black people, all eyes on us. And what made me aware of the fact that there's racism in Canada, even though you hear about it, is the fact that this white security guard followed these 4 Black people who have a shopping cart, putting stuff in the shopping cart. We're not trying to steal anything, and they followed us through all the aisles in Walmart. And it's not to say that, okay, he did it in a way that you just saw him out the corner of your eye standing behind, let's say, an aisle or something. He boldly walked behind us the entire time, about like 10 steps back, walked behind us. When we walked, he walked. When we stopped, he stopped. And I'm like, okay, this is very unnerving because there are so many other people in Walmart, but you spend 30 minutes following around a Black family. So then that was one instance at Walmart. And then as we go to checkout, there's this cashier. She's checking out everyone, so pleasant. Hi, welcome to Walmart. How are you doing? Very friendly, very interactive. When we get to the cash, she does not look up. She does not speak. And I'm like, okay, well, I just watched you for the last 10 minutes, greet all these people so warmly, interact, be so engaging, but when we get there, you don't even look at us. And till this day, or to that point, she never spoke to us, didn't want to really touch the money, just passed it off, didn't say anything, and we took our bags and we left. So then at that point in time, that's the first time I really experienced racism. I was like 19 at the time, and I'm like, whoa, well, I thought this stuff only happened in the States. Because in my head, Canada's this big melting pot of cultures. There are all these Asians, whites, Indians, Blacks. So to just experience that in 2014, I was very taken aback.
Can imagine. Margot, I'm pretty sure you have some stories to share.
Oh boy, that story that you just told, I don't know if you saw me nodding, but that was pretty much my every interaction in a store, not only in Manhattan, but also in Queens. I remember actually vividly growing up, and Jason, I don't know if you remember this from being a little boy, coming in the summer in Queens. There were parts of shopping sections in Queens where you would have to actually put your bags, like if you came into the store, purchases from another store, they would tell you, put your stuff up, and they would give you a number. That would only happen in areas that were Black and Latino. You never saw that in areas where most of the customers were white shopping in stores. That's a form of racism, right? But growing up little, you're like, okay, well, I guess they're doing that because they don't want people to steal. They don't want us to steal. They're assuming all of us will steal. So I totally understand that. I understand being followed around in stores. I have many interactions of, as much as me wanting to spend money in a store, walking right out because I'm like, I'm not spending my money here. I would say my first real interaction with blatant racism, where I knew it consciously, I was 16 years old, shopping in a part of Queens called Forest Hills, Continental Boulevard, very nice area with boutiques. And I remember I was going to like an all-white party, a glow, and I was looking for a white dress. I did not have any purse, any book bag on me. I had my money in my pocket, and I'll never forget, I went to try on a dress, didn't like it, put it back, hung it up, walked out. As I was trying to walk out, the boutique owner, I believe was European from the accent, said, "Where are you going? I know you stole something, and I know you stole that dress." And I was so like, what are you talking about? I don't have a purse on me. I don't have a book bag on me. I'm wearing my clothes. And I had on shorts. It was the summer. You would see I had your dress on. I don't have a coat on. It's not the winter. Started screaming, making a scene in the store. You stole it, little girl. And I'm like, what? I was 16, so, this was on the precipice of everyone having cell phones, so I did not have a cell phone then. It wasn't as popular, and so I couldn't just whip out a cell phone and call my parents. Ironically, a police officer happened to be just on patrol, a white police officer and a Latino police officer, and they kind of heard the ruckus because we were right in the threshold of the door. And they were like, what's going on? And then the boutique owner said, she stole a dress. they're like, what the hell are you talking? And I'm saying hell, they use other words. What the are you talking about? She has no dress on. She doesn't have a bag. Why would you say she's stealing this? Now, this was a white officer saying doing most of the talking. And, you know, it was a bad interaction. They were just like, get out of here. They ended up cursing out the owner. They told me to leave, just like, please, I'm so sorry, you know, but I'll never forget that. That was my first blatant, you know, concrete racism interaction. I will say though, growing up in Queens, I don't know if you all know, it's the most diverse place, not just in the United States, in the world. I experienced a lot of colorism though, colorism within our people, within Latino people. You know, a lot of people thought I was Dominican or Cuban growing up. You know, and they're like, oh, morena, you know, you're dark-skinned Dominican or dark-skinned Cubano or dark-skinned Caribbean woman compared to a light-skinned. I had a lot of those interactions. And I will be honest with you, me coming to New Jersey, moving here, driving here, pulled over a lot, harassed a lot, specifically in Bergen County where I live now. We first lived in Essex County. So I can tell you, it's not just Black men that experience this in America. As a Black woman, I might have been going over the speed limit 5 miles over, 2 miles over, pulled over all the time when I first moved here. So I have experienced that a lot, definitely.
Misha, I'm gonna track to you. You coming from Barbados, where you know it's predominantly Black. What are some of the factors that you would have experienced pertaining to, you know, racism, colorism? What are some of the factors you would have experienced moving to Toronto, moving to Canada?
Okay, so from living somewhere for like 20 years where we're the majority, like we never really, I'm not saying there's not racism in Barbados, but like we're the majority. We don't ever feel super intimidated when we step into a store or step into a space with white people. Right. I went to school at Queen's College, which is, let's say, 35% white. So we've had interactions with white people growing up. Is never an issue. So coming from Barbados to Toronto, I knew that there was diverse backgrounds, diverse cultures. So with that in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna move to Toronto. It's gonna be pretty similar, but there'll be some differences. But from traveling widely, it shouldn't be that different. So then I was wrong. So when I came and I was in Toronto and I was looking for jobs, people would always assume that I wasn't looking for an office job. Like I had to be doing something with food handling or working in a retail store. So when I explained, no, I'm actually looking for an accounting job, they're like, oh, as a clerk, oh, like accounting, like, you know, you need a degree for that. And I'm like, I have a degree. Like, I've been working in accounting for over 5 years, like, and people seem to be shocked. And I'm just like, okay, that's weird. So because I'm Black, I can't command an office job or a job that isn't seen as being a typist or being a secretary or a clerk. Like, that didn't make sense to me. So, okay, I finally found a job and my department has over 100 people. And at the time where I first started, I was the only Black person in that department. And you're thinking, okay, well, Canada's so diverse. All these graduates are graduating from schools in Canada, Black, Indian, white, Chinese. Why are there no Black people in this accounts department? Yeah. So that really shook me up a little bit. And then people, some people were very nice, very polite. Canada, people tend to be very polite. Let's not be mistaken about that. But they didn't know what was appropriate. So I guess sometimes for some people, I was either the first Black person that they really encountered and had a conversation with, or that was on the same level as them in terms of career pursuits. So they would ask me questions or bring up like Black topics so they could think that I would be included. So no, I watch Kardashians too. Like I can talk about anything. I don't have to only talk about Black topics. Yeah. So I'd be like, okay, do you like rap? Do you like Rihanna? Like Rihanna was the head thing that people used to reach for. And I'm like, yeah, but I also like other artists. I don't only listen to rap or reggae or dancehall.
Yeah.
And then it was just finding topics. People thought, that they had to find topics to relate to me. And I'm like, but when y'all are talking to your white counterparts or your Asian counterparts, y'all don't look for white or Asian things to talk about.
Yeah.
So why, when you're interacting with me, you feel the need to reach for something Black? So that was one aspect of it that really took me aback, because in Barbados, like, we're not gonna say look for Black things to talk about, or if we have a white person working with them, we're not look for white things to talk about. We just talk. So I'm like, okay, noted, tick. And then the other part I had a problem with was my accent, which I guess isn't really a race issue. It's just something I faced moving from Barbados to Canada, that people didn't try to understand me. And it's not to say that I was speaking dirty Bajan. I was talking with a dialect. I'm speaking standard English with a slight accent. And they never tried to understand. Most people didn't try to understand me. A few did, but I found a lot of people like laughing when I spoke. And I'm like, I'm just telling you that I don't feel well. Like, why are you laughing? And it's because they don't understand you, but they're not going to tell you they don't understand you. They're going to smile and, and do that. And they don't understand you. So then I had someone I was speaking to the other day, and he's like, sorry, I don't understand street. And I'm like, hey, what do you mean? Like, I'm speaking standard English, but you don't understand street. I'm like, okay, noted, like, okay. So like, yeah, your expression is how I felt in the moment. I'm like, okay, all right, I'm not gonna engage this any further. There's nothing you can really do to address it, because they think that, I don't know if there's a general perception that Black people speak aggressively. So I'm just trying to explain myself sometimes, and then I see people like hold on to the edges of their seats, and I'm like, okay. And they're like, oh, sometimes like you sound like you're arguing. And I'm like, well, I'm just talking. So like, if I'm just talking about something work related and you think that I'm being aggressive, like, I'm not gonna try to necessarily explain to you why what you said wasn't appropriate, because you're not gonna get it.
I understand. Totally agree with you. With all that's going on, we see a lot of companies supporting the Black community. For instance, I saw Uber Eats and some other delivery companies waive the delivery fee for Black-owned businesses until the end of 2020. Saw that just a couple of days ago. What are your thoughts on some of the measures that the companies are taking to, try to incorporate Black businesses?
Well, definitely mixed, because a part of me is like, finally, y'all are trying to help the community. But then the other part is, I feel the majority of them are doing it just for, to kind of protect their businesses.
Correct.
There's this whole cancel culture going on right now. Yeah. So if you don't speak up in support of the movement, there's a perception that you're going to be canceled, right? So I think it's just a marketing tactic for the most part. Definitely. But I think we should still take advantage of the fact that even if you're just doing it for clout, let us monetize from it. Yeah. And let us still help our businesses grow and develop to a point where they don't have to use those measures to support you, just support. It's not, okay, I support Black life, so I'm going to give you all a free ride for 2020. So what happens after 2020?
After 2020, correct.
So what 2021? Are you just going to be like, oh, see ya, we helped y'all, all this has died down.
Correct.
We're done with that. Correct. Is it going to be ongoing, or is it just because of what's going on?
Yeah, I agree. It doesn't fix the major problem. You understand?
It doesn't.
But, yeah.
It pacifies. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Margo, you have anything to add on that particular?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, I think I could kind of blend the two questions, the previous question you asked to her, because, in my district right now, they are kind of fighting for a position, a equity officer position. Like I said earlier, my district is one of the most diverse public school districts in the state. And they were the first district in New Jersey to voluntarily desegregate the schools. So though segregation was not in New Jersey is one of the most segregated states and still is. They voluntarily desegregated decades and decades ago in the 60s. So they always tout themselves as we're liberal, we're progressive. Yes, it's true. We currently are one of the most diverse public school districts in the state, but it wasn't until this year that I was not the only Black administrator. So for the past 2 years, though all the students are Black, Latino, and Asian, I was the only administrator of color and the only woman. Everybody was a white man running the school, making decisions for these students. The students, going back to them being activists, they stormed the board meeting 2 years ago and said, not anymore. No offense to them as individuals, but we are tired of white men making decisions for us. You know, they said it's an issue that Miss Mack is the only female. It's an issue. She's the only person of color. The answer was, well, now we have all Black administration. And I think it goes into the last portion, right? Like pacifying. So what does that really mean, right? Like, okay, so now we have all Black administration, but what's the curriculum like, right? Are we reading Toni Morrison in our English classes? Are we reading James Baldwin? Are we reading Ta-Nehisi Coates? Are our students experiencing those pieces of literature? Are our students experiencing different methods of mathematics from the Middle East, from the continent of Africa? Are we still teaching them how to solve geometry equations in the most Eurocentric way, right? So again, when you talk about just like surfacey layer, okay, we're trying to have an equity officer, what does that really mean? And that's more my question. I also agree about this whole everything's mixed. I'm not saying we shouldn't have an equity officer, but we can't stop there. Just having that position does not change things for these students and parents. You know, when you talk about just being equal for everybody, traditional ways of thinking, we have parent-teacher conference still in the evening, during the week. Though we have parents who work multiple jobs, though we have tons of students that don't speak English, that are immigrants, have we ever thought out of the box to have parent-teacher conferences on Saturday, on Sunday, having interpreters there for the parents? So this is the thing, right? So again, when you're talking about just doing things on a surface level, we have to think about it in a more intentional way and go deeper for it to sustain and for us to all see change. You know, that's the main thing. And, you know, like, I'm sorry, like I was saying the other day, I was like, I think I want a iced frappuccino. I'm going to go to Starbucks. My husband's like, did you hear about Starbucks? They wouldn't let their workers wear Black Lives Matter shirts. Apparently they switched and they, whatever, you know, he's like, I don't know if I will go there, you know, and it's, again, now they're allowing them to wear it. Yeah. But what does that really mean? You know, are the managers in Starbucks, store managers, Black and Latino? Are they Asian? Are they women? You know, that's how you make change, not by allowing them to wear Black Lives Matter t-shirts.
Correct, yeah.
You know?
Yes, I understand. Sticking on the Black Lives Matter topic, some celebrities face some backlash because they're basically saying that it should not be a Black Lives Matter movement, that it should be all lives matter. Yeah. So what is your take on that?
That personally irritates me to my core. Because I will be honest, this might be a little, you know, controversial, but we got to stick with the core issue first, right?
Yeah.
Anything Black is wrong. Look at the definition, Black and white in the dictionary, you see it. I showed my girls that about 3 years ago. Toys in the store, the white dolls are out first. Everything Black is wrong. And that's how this world has modernized, right? So we cannot forget that. So let's fix the issues with Blacks across the world, and then we can get to everybody else. But that's how I personally feel. I feel that there are a lot of people that try to hang on to this movement as well. Okay, not only Black Lives Matter, LGBTQ. I'm not saying they don't. Yeah. I'm not saying they should be discriminated against. Absolutely not. They're humans just like us, right? We all believe the same. But let's first fix the core issue, and then we can get to everybody else. That's how I feel.
Yeah,
I 100% would agree with that because it's like, okay, they're saying all lives matter, but we're dealing with Black lives right now.
That's right.
White lives, Asian lives, Indian lives, they're not being lynched. They're not being attacked just because of the color of their skin. So let's look at how we can create the mindset that Black is equal before we can even discuss all lives matter. Let Black people, let Black lives even be treated like lives, be treated like humans, and then we can have a discussion after that. But we need to really isolate Black people so that we can celebrate their lives instead of trying to kill them because their skin color is perceived as a crime. By who? Why?
Yeah. I understand what you're saying. It's been said that, well, it's proven that, you know, whites, it's easier for a white person to get ahead in basically any aspect over a Black person. You know, I had a friend, he basically told me, remember, and this thing stuck with me since then. He told me, you know, we as Black people have to work twice as hard to achieve half of what they achieve. You know, so I just want to get a gist of what y'all take out. How can we eradicate that like systemic racism? Margot, you can.
Oh, that's such a good question, a deep question, a real question. I'm gonna go back to what your aunt and uncle, my parents used to tell me. You have to work. It's not an option. You have to work 100 times harder.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not, we can admit it's wrong, but that's just a fact. Yeah. So when I would come home and say, "Oh, look, Daddy, I got an 85 in math," he would say, where are the other points? I got a 95. Where's the other 5 points? And yes, it was a second of cutting me down, but it was a way of bringing me up to say, listen, don't settle for that. You have to work harder. I tell my daughters that, and I am hard on them. And I will be honest with you too, like this whole immigrant perspective, right? So I'm first generation in this country. My husband comes from Black Southern roots, right? His grandmother, who's still alive, grew up in segregated West Virginia, went to separate schools, played with white kids on her block, and they went 2 separate ways to school. So his perspective growing up, and he grew up here in New Jersey, in a city, Paterson, New Jersey. Me growing up in New York, being a first generation American from immigrant parents, I feel like we do have 2 different perspectives on certain things. And I definitely am way more harder on the girls. And I think that's more the immigrant aspect of how I grew up. But again, I just don't think it's, I wish we don't. I'm a realist. We do. Yeah. I'll never forget when because I'm an administrator where I taught. And I will never forget the first day of the school year, the first year I became assistant principal 3 years ago, you know, a couple white teachers, former colleagues said, "Why would you want to do this, Margot? You're crazy. Why? Why would you want to take this on? Weren't you happy as a history teacher?" I said I was, but I wanted more. I want to make more change for our kids. And why wouldn't I? And I kept thinking to myself, would you ask a white colleague that? A white male who stepped out of their comfort zone to stop teaching to elevate to an administrator? Would you ask them that? No, you wouldn't. So we have to keep pushing. Like you said, of all the hundreds of people in your office, you were the only, I think you said the only accountant or the only person there of color, you know? Continue to stay there, continue to push for more, continue to put in for promotions, because that's the only way. We deserve it, right. You know, let's not settle.
Just like anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Just, I want to touch on the criminal justice system in the US. I mean, for years we've been saying that it's basically set up to make the Black person suffer. You know, I was reading a case a couple of days ago. 2 individuals, one Black, one white, they were convicted for the same crime. They had the same criminal record. Both of them had one prior. When they went in front of the judge, it was the same judge. The white guy, he got 2 years for that crime. The Black guy, same record, same crime. He got 26 years from that same judge. 26 years, correct? So I mean, this is a definite need for prison reform. So what are your thoughts? How do we go about trying to have this done for us to benefit from it?
Again, a profound question, one that hits home because my husband's middle brother is in prison. And I don't say that with shame because he was wrongly convicted. He's in the Midwest, in another state where they are it truly is essentially a system of enslavement, especially in that state. So, how do you fix it? I think first we have to admit it. Not us. We know.
Yeah.
The powers that be have to admit it and have to be purposeful with change. Again, I keep circling back to what I do because my vocation is my life. I mean, it's not just an issue. Yes, our Black men, and then secondly, Latino men are locked up at astronomical numbers compared to white men and women. But how it affects the Black family, how it affects the Black child in school, that's where you see the effect. And, to see, students in schools that don't have their parents there because they are locked up, because the grandparents, and because of that, the grandparents are raising them and they're tired and they raise their own children. Now I'm 60 something, 70 something years old, trugging to school, for an issue. You see the breakdown. So, I mean, how do you stop it? We have to admit it. And we have to have purposeful programs to not only help the recidivism rate, that rate of people leaving jail and going back to jail, but just why are we getting to this point? And that goes back to the first point you made earlier about, well, why are people looting, right? It's not just like I'm greedy, right? I'm looting because it's a physical reaction to you having your foot on my neck.
Yeah.
And my grandparents' neck and my great grandparents' neck. And I want that. And I want mine. So I deserve to break into Tiffany and get that chain, right? Because why should everybody else who lives on Fifth Avenue have it? And I can't have it. So it's a physical reaction that I, as a younger person, would probably pass judgment, but now I don't because I'm wiser. So again, why are people selling drugs on the corner? Why are people doing other illegal activities? Did we ever question, did the school system fail them? Were they told they can't do this? My mother told me, your Aunt Jason told me, she went to one of the top high schools in Queens when she transferred from Brooklyn. She said her guidance counselor told her, the only thing you can do as a Black female is to be a secretary. My mother had dreams of owning a business, of owning a job placement business. In the 50s, she graduated and they told her that's all you can do, or you can go work for the city, right? So that's what they told her to do. And her grandmother who raised her here really didn't know any better. So again, systems of holding us down. So that's what I have to say.
Yeah, sad. The media, I want to touch on the media. The media has been known throughout the years for basically fabricating the news to cry down Blacks. It's known. The one that really showed me that, the one that really hit home for me was over in England, the Daily Mail newspaper. It was evident in the headlines when Kate Middleton, when she was pregnant, and when Meghan Markle was pregnant, and they had a picture in the newspaper when Kate was pregnant. She had her hand on her belly, and I just want to read the headline when they took the picture with Kate. The headline said, "Not long to go. Pregnant Kate tenderly cradles her baby bump while wrapping up her royal duties ahead of maternity leave." When they took the picture of Meghan, same exact picture, she just had her hand on her belly. Why can't Meghan Markle keep her hands off her bum? Experts tackle the question that has the nation talking. Is it pride, vanity, or acting? And I mean, that was one. And then another instance, where they were, trying to zero in on their finances now. When they were speaking about Kate, the headlines were Duke and Duchess secretly set up companies to protect their brand like the Beckhams. when they were speaking about Meghan, the headlines were a royal cashing, how Meghan Markle trademarked over 100 items from hoodies to socks 6 months before split from the monarchy. Like I said, it's evident there. So I just want to ask, like, what role does the media, play in showcasing the racism?
I have a story, but you can start.
Pardon?
You want to start since I started on the last?
Go ahead, yeah, you can go ahead.
So it's part of the system of racism, right? The intentional institutional fabric of what it is to hold down Black people and then other people of color. So just a quick story. When I worked in higher education, I worked in Manhattan at an art university, and my supervisor was a Pakistani woman. One parent was Pakistani, one parent was Indian, and she was raised in Kuwait. And she's Muslim. And she said that when she first came to America for university, for college, when she was 18, she was afraid of Black people. She used to actually move on the New York City subway, move cars, run away from us. And I'm like, what? Excuse? And this is a woman of color, my complexion, by the way, too. And I'm like, what? And she said, yeah, because growing up in Kuwait, I used to see Boys in the Hood. I used to see Menace to Society. I used to see, other shows that showcase you guys as violent and as, and I'm like, wow. And, shows that, again, okay, I saw those things, but her taking that in from, she said, I didn't watch the Cosby Show. They didn't play the Cosby Show. They didn't play shows like that. They only played shows that showcased us in a certain light. So that was her narrative. She came to America and was told, stay away from us, run away from us. So that's just an example about the blatantness of the institution of the media holding us down.
It's sad, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think enough is being done in the school system to educate our kids about racism?
Absolutely not. 100%. Another story. The day Trump was elected, that night, I didn't go to bed because, the returns kept coming in all hours of the night. Cried myself to work because I knew what that would mean, yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. He was blatant with his. He didn't lie. We knew what it was going to be. I will never. Now I was a history. Was a history teacher, so this is normal to me. This is my passion. I will never forget. All day I kept getting bangs on my classroom door. Miss Mack, can I come in? I said, what's going on? All day, all different periods. My teacher, Mr. This, Miss This. I'm talking about my colleagues in my history department. They want to keep going on talking about the War of 1812. They want to talk about the American Revolution. I said, wait, what? I didn't teach that day. My lesson plan went in the garbage. The kids were crying. I had students that are dreamers that were, brought here to America illegally as little kids. And so it's not, whatever, not their fault. They're legal immigrants. And they were literally crying because they're just like, they're going to come and round us up and they're going to send us back to our different countries. And the fact that even my own colleagues in the history department would not stop and pause and say, whatever I was planning to teach this day has to stop. Let the kids feel and get their emotions out, and let's talk about this, says it all. So no, the education system doesn't do enough about it because it's difficult to talk about. It makes people uncomfortable. My district tried to have trainers come in a couple of years ago. They split us up in groups to talk about race and equity, and some, apparently, I wasn't in those groups. Some of my white colleagues ran away, literally, physically left and was like, I'm out, because it made them feel uncomfortable. So if that's an adult doing that, you as a teacher, as an educator, as an administrator, you got to put your feelings to the side and do what's best for the kids. So absolutely not. There's not enough. Absolutely not. Even in the most progressive schools, there's not. Mm-mm.
Well, also to come back to the Caribbean, I find that they don't really even speak about racism. They'll teach you about slavery and they'll teach you about how slavery came about and the institution of slavery. but no one fast forwards a couple of centuries where everyone's free, everyone has the same rights, and discuss how, as Black people, we still feel are still treated inferiorly to our white counterparts. That's not a discussion that's held in schools. Like, where are you going to teach that? You're not going to teach that in history. You're not going to teach that in geography. So, should we put something in the curriculum, or as guidance counselors talk about different topics? Because as my guidance counselors to talk about what sex,
Yeah.
like, not saying that we shouldn't discuss that, but how about we discuss racism? How about we discuss homophobia? How about we discuss the real things that are impacting the mental of the children that are in at schools?
Yeah,
So we need to look at how do we integrate having these discussions with the children, especially in secondary schools and high schools. How do we have a discussion and make time in our curriculum to have this included?
Right. I mean, I know, I always, I'm a storyteller. So that's how I taught. I never actually used my history textbook. I used to, no, it's propaganda. We're going to use different documents, and I'm going to, because the whole point, it's not for you to memorize facts. It's for you to become a critical thinker and for you to debate. And I'm giving you all different versions of this topic in history. You guys, you students, delineate what you believe is to be true and why. That was my stance, right? So as an example, I used to say, to bring it, like you said, into our modern world centuries later, talk about, why does the Bronx, New York, that borough, have the highest rate of asthma of any place in the world? Okay. How is that a derivative of slavery? Talk about that. Why are we Black and Latinos, specific the Latino population in the Bronx, Puerto Rican and Dominican, pushed in these old buildings, living on top of each other, taking in the fumes of Manhattan and the factories? Why do you think we have the highest rate of asthma there? How did that happen? So I would ask questions like that to my students to make them aware. We have something called food deserts in America. There are many big cities that are mostly Black, populated by Blacks and Latinos, that don't have supermarkets. Right? So we have high blood pressure, we have diabetes. Our people have to take multiple trains and buses to go to a supermarket to get fresh food and vegetables and fruits. So instead of that, we go to the bodegas, we go to the corner store, and we get bags of chips, we get candy, we get juice. This is how we are being killed. It's systematic. Why is Whole Foods only in certain areas? So again, I used to talk to my students about that, and me and my husband talk to our daughters about that. We make them aware. And again, those are forms of the derivatives of enslavement of Africans.
Yeah. I just think we lost Misha there.
Yes.
Yeah, I just think we lost her there. Margot, I just want to ask, if one of your white counterparts, had to come to you and ask, how can they become a better ally? Mm-hmm. What would your response be?
So that hasn't happened yet. Someone asked me last week, because even though we're in quarantine, I've been popping in and out of the high school. They asked me, well, what do you think about what's going on? Can you talk to me about that? I tell them, in order to be an ally, sometimes you just have to be quiet. You have to listen. You have to be still as a white person, as a person that you might not be in power, right? But your people are. And sometimes you just have to be quiet, because sometimes whites and other folks have a tend to, in their bleeding liberalness and them trying to think they're helping us, take over. And I would say, here's a list of books you need to read to understand what this is.
Yeah.
Learn about the civilizations in Africa, because, we weren't just people that were, doing nothing, right? We, first learn about that. And then here's a whole bunch of books I think I need you to read and really digest and understand. And that's what I would say. And just sometimes I would say, ask questions. If they ask, how can I be an ally? Continue to ask questions, and continue not to pass judgment. you know, but I think it's important that a lot of times they're quiet and they listen and they don't try to take over.
So it's really something.
Mm-hmm.
Final question I have for you, Margot. Do you believe that we would actually live to see the day where Blacks are treated equally?
Whew. Again, going back to realism and hope. Hi. Going back to realism and hope, I don't know. You know, when you live in a world where I think at the time she was 8, my daughter was told, you know, you can't be in this club because your skin is dark and we look like this. And that was at the hand of another quote unquote person of color, a Korean student. And you're experiencing that at 8 years old, which was a couple years ago. I don't think so. You know, I always have hope, but in my lifetime, I do think more will, in a positive direction, will happen. If you asked me, Margot, do you think you're going to have a president of color? Even in college, I would say, heck no, are you kidding me? Look what happened. You know, Barack Obama. Now there's things that came from that. They blocked everything. He couldn't be the great president that he could have been even greater than he was. But again, the Republican Congress blocked everything. Our people got comfortable and didn't go back out and vote to avoid of all Republican Congress. So there's so much that comes from that. But I do think we will continue to see strides. Do I think in my lifetime it will be completely equal? I don't, because again, race is a construct created by man to make us all different, to keep other people down, and that is the fabric of all of the places in the world. So, you know, for that to happen, the institution of racism would have to go away, and I don't see that.
City there, where Blacks are treated equally.
You would like to be optimistic that you would actually see it, but I don't think in our lifetime we're going to see it. I think that's for the generation. We're creating the movement for the generations to come. Just like our grandparents had us the baton, and we're running. We're making strides, but we're not going to, I don't think that we're going to fully get there in our lifetime. Maybe in the next 50 or so years, as sad as that may sound, because at the end of the day, racism is a mindset. It's something that has been taught. We didn't wake up or we weren't born racist. So especially when you have a lot of these older people who at their core, they are racist because they lived in segregation, they agreed with it, and they've taught their generation to come after them, like their sons and their grandsons, they've taught them to be racist. So once that generation, I guess, I don't want to say passes away, because I find that more people now are being open-minded. More people are now aware that, okay, well, I was taught to think like this, but because I'm getting secondary socialization and realizing that I really shouldn't think like this, because just because you're this color doesn't mean that you're uneducated. Doesn't mean that you have to be poor. Doesn't mean that all these stereotypes that I was taught is the case. We're becoming more equal in the sense that we're getting more opportunities for education, to live in certain areas. So we're kind of breaking down the barrier, but I don't think that we're gonna achieve equality in this lifetime, but we're definitely making the strides to do so.
Yeah. Margot, you had something to add?
Yeah, definitely. You know, I definitely concur. It's very similar to my answer. You know, what I was going to add, that if you take two people I hold in high esteem in my life and their experiences, and you see how far we have come, and again, are we going to see it? Don't think so, but it will come. Take my father. You know, my father was a carpenter in England. He lived in England when he left the British Virgin Islands, and he worked as a carpenter at Buckingham Palace, right? He came to the United States because he wanted even more, and he was without a job for 2.5 years, his first 2 years here in the United States, even though he was a carpenter in Buckingham Palace. He would go to the trade unions, he told me, every day, get up, and they told him, no Puerto Ricans, no Blacks. Because the only really Hispanics in New York at that time were Puerto Rican. No Puerto Ricans, no Blacks. even though he had his credentials. Can't get any higher than that, or where you're a carpenter. And he had to pivot. So he never was a carpenter in the United States. And thank God he had someone from his country, Tortola, that sponsored him, and not only sponsored him to come here as a green card holder, they fed him, they clothed him, they gave him shelter and let him live in their home for 2.5 years without him contributing anything. You know, my father still persevered, and he still made something of himself, right? He didn't give up. He pivoted. That's what we have to do constantly, every day, every second. So he had to drop being a carpenter and he did something else. When I think of my husband's grandmother, our daughter's great-grandmother, who's still alive, she's in her late 80s. Like I said, she grew up in segregated West Virginia. And West Virginia is weird. It's not really the South. It's not the Midwest. It's not the North. It just is. And if you know the history of West Virginia, it broke off from Virginia because they didn't want slavery there. But still, it's considered the South. So especially then, her growing up, and, you know, she tells stories of, believe it or not, this was shocking for me to hear. She used to say, when I first started dating my husband, when we were in college, desegregation was the worst thing to happen to Black people. I would say, Grandma Maxine, what are you talking about? How could you say that? She said, let me tell you something. When it rained in my school in West Virginia growing up, the rain would come in. We had mud floors, one-room schoolhouse, but I had the best Black teachers, the blessed Black principals. We might not have had really good books, but we learned and we were taught well. One argues that desegregation, we're kind of together, we're kind of not. In New Jersey, we're definitely segregated by race, but our kids of color don't get the same. But I still look to her story, like my father's story, as hope, because she still persevered, right? And though she didn't go to college, she essentially was an engineer. They didn't call her that, but that's what she was. And she persevered, and she, you know, attained a lot, especially as a woman raising 3 daughters on her own. And all her daughters made something of themselves. So again, it takes incremental steps, but hope is there. I have hope. But, you know, happening in our generation, I don't know. And circling back to what you said earlier about, you know, we just have to work harder. That's just a fact that we have, you know, that we have to do, you know?
Yeah, Misha, final question I have for you. If one of your white counterparts, you know, had to come and ask, how can there be a better ally? What answer would you give them?
If you want to become a better ally, you need to educate yourself. Like, I'm not asking for you to talk about a topic that you have no idea what's going on, what the impacts it has on people. Sit back, listen to how people feel, do some research, educate yourself. And if you feel comfortable after that to support us openly and vocally, you can do that. But in the interim, do not speak on something that you're not knowledgeable on. I understand you don't have to be Black to stand with us, but if you're standing with us, have an educated perspective. Don't just talk. Just don't talk because you think that you have to say something, because you don't, right? Because that's not how you really feel. Don't say it. Don't say Black Lives Matter if you don't really think Black Lives Matter. If you don't understand what the reason for the cause, you don't understand the police brutality, if you don't understand the racial injustices and what has happened that was led up to the protest, don't speak on it. Because you think that you're helping the cause and you're actually harming it.
Yeah, totally agree. Ladies, I want to thank you for joining me to discuss this, you know, much needed topic. Just like y'all, I honestly don't believe that we will see the day that, you know, Blacks are treated equally. But once again, just like you all, I believe that we are going in the right direction, and hopefully, you know, the ones that do come after us, hopefully, you know, they can definitely benefit from, you know, all that's going on at the moment. So once again, I just want to thank you.
Thank you
for having us.
Thank you so much.